And we're live. It's Thursday. I'm Eddie Stone. Nice of you to join me today. Appreciate so much this chance to connect in a world that doesn't offer us as much connection as we once had. So appreciate this chance so much. And see, we've already got some folks joining us here on Facebook as well as YouTube. And we've got some folks waving to us from Instagram. Hi, Instagram. If you guys are wondering, we've got sort of Instagram up here in the top left. We got centered on Facebook and YouTube. And so it's all sort of around us. So I hope we find you well. I have the blinds cracked because we've got some sunshine here in North Carolina. It's actually, and this is not to make anybody jealous, but we've actually got 80 degrees today. So it's in the best way I can. I wanted to share it with you. I know from talking to some of our friends in the Northeast, Northwest, and out in the mountains of California, we've got folks seeing snow and not as sort of warm and summery or spring-like conditions. So anyway, hope everybody's well. I wanted to talk with everybody today about the dynamics of working from home and what I consider to be some of the basics. We're in this really unprecedented situation with the pandemic. And for a lot of people, it creates these waters they've not had to navigate before. I mean, quite literally, we've got millions of people working remotely under the sort of stay-at-home dynamics that we're encouraged to do, which obviously we agree and believe it's brilliant, the way people have complied and how that's impacting this rate of growth of the virus. But when you push people out into the wild, so to speak, that's sort of what the term we use when we talk about working from home. There's questions, right, about how do you do that? How do you do that effectively? Because you're managing situations that you haven't managed before. And it's not like you just sort of decide to work from home one day under normal circumstances. Probably for most people, you've got people at the house. They're also dealing with stay at home. And so it can be even crowded or a little chaotic. And so what are some of the best practices that you might use? And I want to draw on both things that I've learned over time from various conferences and webinars on human productivity and things of that kind, but just also from my own practical experience. So for the past 30 years, I've worked from home or remotely more than I ever have in an office. And I have to say, I like it. I mean, I like it a lot. I like the personal freedom. It layers some additional responsibilities on you, but I'm confident in our ability to handle those things. And so I'm a big fan of this. If the work you do allows it, if the workplace you work in allows it. Of course, if you're a VBO with Touchstone Essentials, we are built for this. We're built for it both corporately. We've been remotely working for many, many years. And of course, developing our business also is that way. And so let me give you some ideas of what I think is important, because I think it's key to sort of have an outline of a plan. And if you have a plan, you do everything you can to sort of stick to it, then use your experiences on a day in and day out basis to refine what you're doing. I think you'll find yourself productive. And there's two key words that I think about if you're making some notes that you want to jot down. And the first one is your attitude or your mindset, whichever way you're most comfortable discussing it, because how you think about this, how you approach it, your attitude during it will have an impact. And then the environment that you work in, whether it's crowded, not perfect, whatever that happens to be. I'm set up today in our little kitchen nook area overlooking our deck. And I work from here sometimes. I am fortunate to have an office here at the house, but you can make any environment work for you, but there are certain things that you need to think about. And so the first thing for me is I believe in prep. And if you're making your notes, this is a real key figure here, and I want you to write several things under this. So preparation in this case is not only prep for the work you're going to do, right? Thinking ahead about the difference between doing this at home, in the wild, or in an office, right? So there'll be some differences in that regard, but primarily your workplace. Because even though it's ad hoc in terms of how we're trying to figure these things out on the fly, there are certain things you can do to just sort of assure yourself some success. And the first one is, in my opinion, it's having a dedicated workplace and outside of the main house traffic. And so most houses, the kitchen area, an area like I'm in right now, they're pretty busy, particularly if you, your spouse, your kids, maybe there's somebody else that's stay at home with you during this period of time. And so if you're going to really focus on the work you have to do, focus on the productivity of that work, I would encourage you to avoid that high traffic part of your home, because you don't want to constantly be trying to say to someone, shh, be quiet, I'm on a conference call, I'm concentrating, I'm reading, whatever that happens to be, because that's no fun for you and won't make everybody in the house a fan of yours, right? So the first thing to do is to think about a dedicated work area, and that could be a living room, a spare bedroom, or even a garage, right? Obviously, you'll have to think about the environment from a temperature standpoint and things like that. But having a dedicated workspace is important. And number two, you want to look for a desktop of sorts. That can be the end of a dining room table. It can be a makeshift out of, say, a coffee table that you have in a living room, if that's the type of area that you work in. But you want to be able to do more than just keep a laptop on your lap. Right? Having the ability to have some spread to your work, and hopefully it's a place where you can leave that work from a day in and day out basis and not have to constantly pack everything up. That would be preferred. If that's not available to you, okay, we understand that, but that would be preferred, a desktop type area. And then this is not something perhaps that you have in your home, but it's something you might consider ordering online, and that's a good chair. I believe deeply in the value of a good ergonomic office chair. Hopefully you have one of those. If not, I would encourage you to consider, since for most parts of the country, this is going to last anywhere from 2 to 4 to 6, as many as 8 more weeks. And it may be something that your workplace changes, and so it becomes a more semi-permanent part of the workspace. But having a good chair is critical. We tend to not think about it until we're sitting in a chair that's uncomfortable, and all of a sudden we realize we're getting up, walking around, and walking away from our work on a constant basis. And mostly that's because, whether it's conscious or subconscious, your body's saying, I'm uncomfortable, get up and move around. So I'm a big believer in the value of a good office chair if you can get one. And then this is probably one of the bigger pro tips I can give anybody: a good quality ear covering headset that's noise canceling. Now, if it can be something that you can also use with your phone, and they have these for the gaming industry. So if you don't know where to find it, you could go on any of the major sites such as Best Buy, Amazon, or whatever, and you can find these anywhere from, well, you can get on the inexpensive end, probably $25 to $30, but you're going to get what you pay for. You've probably got to plan that to have a good quality noise canceling headset that you can use with your phone. You're going to spend upwards of $100, or frankly, even more. But it is the type of thing that will last a long time. There's many applications for it. If it's Bluetooth, it's something you most of the time can utilize when you get into a modern car where they have those dynamics built into those systems. But I really believe a good headset. So again, the rest of the family can coexist with you as you're doing the work you're doing, because you've got to realize here, this is about coexistence, particularly at a moment like this, if you're unable to have a dedicated space. And so you want to remain, and I'm going to come back to this, flexible in that regard. And so you may need some technology to support what you're doing. So that's important from the headphone standpoint. And then sort of once we go past prep and some of those little details, now talking again about sort of your attitude and your mindset, I believe it's important to have a conversation with everybody in the household that you're going to be around. And I mean around a lot, right? We're not going out in the evening hours. You're essentially sort of shut in with someone. And man, if there's one little thing that gets on somebody's nerves, this is the kind of situation where it's going to really get on their nerves. And so you want to be conscious of this type of thing. And so having a discussion ahead of time, right? Not during the middle of the battle, but ahead of time, in the morning hours, the night before, sort of establishing expectations. I try to be conscious of letting Maria and even Boomer know, because I'll shut down the blinds in my office where he normally sits, that I've got a webinar coming up. I'm recording something. So if I've got situations where I feel like I've got to really shut things down from a noise standpoint, I want everybody to know they're going to do what they can to support me. In that regard, I realize with kids, that can be a little unpredictable, and that's okay. If there's ever a time when somebody's going to tolerate and understand disruptions and things of that kind, this is that moment in time. But if you establish expectations with everybody in the house, and having done that, then your own expectations, realizing that I'm striving for perfection, but I realize that I've got to be nimble and know that things can happen. Then as circumstances play out, you're going to be in a much better position in that regard. And so that's sort of important to make sure expectations are established. Now, as we establish those, let's turn our conversation here to boundaries, because you've prepped in terms of your work environment and sort of thought through those dynamics, and you're making the most of whatever your available circumstances are. Here's the other big issue to talk about when you establish expectations with people, and that's developing boundaries. And I'm talking more here about your own boundaries than the household boundaries, right? If you've communicated well with everybody, you stay in contact with everybody about what's going on with you and when you need to be super quiet or whatever that happens to be. That's sort of one side of this. But the other one is setting boundaries, acknowledging the boundaries, and thinking through the boundaries of your own behavior throughout the day. Some people are really geared towards being able to work independently in this regard. Their work is project oriented, so they've got a list of things they have to do in a certain period of time. It's really clear, it's understanding, it's working through a spreadsheet on the computer, it's responding to 16 emails, whatever that happens to be. And so they can be driven by that, and they're less likely to get distracted. But for most people, and this includes myself, distractions are so easy to find, or we might not call them distractions, we might just call them temptations, that if you don't think about this ahead of time, and for me, I used to keep a list. I'm past that now. I sort of understand with clear terms what my weaknesses are and what I need to watch out for. And if I get a little off track, I can recognize that. And so I have the ability to kind of pull myself back in, but it's critical to think about these boundaries. So for example, boundaries with pets. If you are a pet lover, cats, dogs, whatever that happens to be, and you just can't keep your hands off of them, and they're so cute, and you turn your attention when they come in the room, whatever happens to be, then you may have to shut your door and establish boundaries with pets, because unwittingly, they can wind up occupying a lot of your day, just the simple acts of playing with them. And if you think about the difference of in your workspace, you don't usually have a pet that's going to jump on the desk and call for your attention and disrupt your thought. And this is really about the ability to maintain your focus for a reasonable period of time so you can finish projects that you've started, finish a document, finish an email, so that you're not constantly starting and stopping, because that's really where productivity suffers when you're working from home, is if you're constantly starting and stopping projects. So you want to watch out for that. At the same time, pets, also TV. Now, I know there are some people that feel like a television on in the background is important for them. And if that's true, you just want to make sure that that TV is out of your visual range. If it's a sound coming from the TV that makes the space sort of feel full, you can also do that with a fan. But if it needs to be a TV, make sure it's low enough that it's not disruptive to you and won't get in the way when you're trying to read or concentrate on a phone call. Because here's where this can really get in the way. If you try to multitask, right? It's the same dynamic if you're trying to do an email while you're talking to someone on a conference call. You're not really listening. You may tell yourself that you are, but you're not giving the respect to the conversation of the person that you really should, or that you owe them, when you are distracted either by what's going on a television. And let's face it, right now, it's all breaking news. It's all sort of just mind-numbing dynamics and frankly, sadness most of the time. And so if you can't shut it out, it's going to creep in and get in the way of both your productivity and the respect that you're offering to other people. So pets, TV, social media is the very same thing. You could find yourself for hours scrolling through Instagram, scrolling through Facebook, scrolling through TikTok. Now may be the time that on your smartphone, you set parameters and timers, just like you did for kids, or you do for kids, for yourself. You don't mean for it to happen, but frankly, if you're trying to escape a little bit, man, you can go down on a rabbit hole with TikTok, watching little pets and kids dancing and whatever that happens to be for a long period of time. And you've forgotten that you have responsibilities that you've not kept up with for the day or days, right? We're all giving each other space and room and understand we're trying to navigate these shaky waters, frankly. But you want to make sure you've identified these things that can get in the way. And so social media, endlessly browsing the internet, even the phone itself, text has become such a constant thing for families, for friends to keep up with. Well, if your phone is constantly going off, just like the little notifications on social media, then it's difficult for you to concentrate because you're constantly stopping, starting, and picking up the phone. My boundaries mean several things. One, my phone remains on silent most of the time. Rarely do I allow the ringer, only if I'm going to be out and about, it's in my pocket and I can't keep up and I've got an expectation for a call. And I turn it face down. So instead of the phone controlling me, I work. It's not always easy. I'm not always successful, but I work to control the phone. For those that interact with me on a frequent basis, you've probably noticed that I will text you and say, hey, is this a good time to call? Because I don't want to, one, waste the time on a call, force you to listen to a message that I leave or whatever that happens to be, right? I would rather ping someone, quick text, hey, are you available? Do you have 5 minutes? Whatever happens to be, so that our energies are focused and they shouldn't respond to say they have the time until they've completed whatever project they're working on. Right. So I'm not disrupting them, and I'm also not chasing them with voicemails or whatever happens to be. Consider it, because I think that's pretty crucial. At the same time, I schedule when I see emails. And so I don't have an expectation that I need to respond to every email the moment that it's received. It's not quite like the old-fashioned mail, but I somewhat treat it like mail in that it takes a period of time to travel. I've got some space to digest and respond, and then I send it back. Obviously, my time frame is not quite the same unless it's a really busy period. And if I've ever left you out there 2 or 3 days before response, I regret having to have done that. It's a function of schedule. But I treat email in the same way so that it doesn't become disruptive, because all of these things can disrupt your pattern of thinking. It can get away with the quality of the work that you're doing and also accomplishment of those primary or principal goals. Okay, next, for boundaries. And this one may be as important as any of them, and that's food. When we're nervous, when we're sort of in these sort of crisis moments that we all are, for a lot of us, food becomes comfortable and familiar. And when we think there's some scarcity, when we get our hands on the food, man, we can go a little bit crazy. I've had several friends and noticed myself, Marie and I bought things that should last us 2 or 3 weeks, but yet we're going in the cabinet a little sooner just because it's there. We don't even normally keep a bag of chips in the house, right? All of a sudden, there's a bag of chips with my name on them calling out to me, right? And for most people, that same dynamic is in place. And then when you couple that with being at home essentially 24/7, so that the refrigerator's always there, the cabinet's always there, if you don't establish some boundaries, you could wind up coming out of this having given up a lot of the progress you've made on your health, maintenance of healthy weight. And a lot of these foods tend to be snack foods, ultra-processed foods, things that are quick, things that are salty or sweet. And so they're not necessarily the kind of things you would eat normally, but yet here you more or less give yourself that license. However, 1 week on vacation, giving yourself license to eat like you want, sort of that's one thing. 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks, however long this turns out to be, entirely different. And so you can give up a year or two's worth of work in that regard. So I strongly encourage you to establish patterns and boundaries. If you're a breakfast eater, you used to eat breakfast on the way to work, then you wake up and you do the same thing. If there was a certain time where you were taking lunch and you didn't snack in between, do the same thing now. Same in the afternoon, same in the evenings. Try to adopt those schedules that you're comfortable with and that you've been able to manage to support your cardiovascular health, control of diabetes, control of weight, whatever that happens to be for you. So this is really critical, is to think ahead about meals. I encourage people to meal prep. I feel like that when we're making these decisions on the go, there's sort of one thing, right? The quickness of the moment in the morning when you're trying to get out the door, you don't want to be caught up in traffic. You might not linger on a breakfast decision. So you're kind of forced to think ahead of time and maybe do what you did the day before. You've got a favorite place that you stop for a cup of coffee and a protein bar, whatever that happens to be. In this situation, because you've got some idle time as things are going, we can get far more elaborate and not realize how many more calories we're consuming. And most are not exercising at the same pace that they once did, right? I'm avid with my gym. It's one of those places I go and clear my mind, and it just has a big impact on me. My gym's closed. My gym's been closed for weeks. My gym's going to stay closed for weeks. So I've actually went down to the basement, dug out some weights and things that I had from, I hate to admit this, both from high school, college, and years ago. And I've sort of reassembled and cobbled together a little mini gym in the garage. And so I'm using that escape, but I'm still not expending calories and doing the same thing as I was before. So meal prep will help you thinking about it. If you're going to snack, because this is just that moment where you're going to snack, right? Pre-do those snacks, right? If you can do fresh fruits and vegetables pre-cut in a bowl, wrapped, whatever, so that you're not digging through the cabinet and saying, man, what do I want now? Because that's not a strong recipe day in and day out to come out of this in the healthy way that you want to. So that's sort of that aspect. And here's the last thing I'll leave with you, and I kind of call this my pro tip on food. Be a mindful eater. Be prepared to say to yourself, why am I eating this? Why did I reach for this? Are these calories worth it, right? I wanted dessert, but this one's not so good, right? I'd rather you throw away kind of a crappy dessert so that you find one that's good and you get the value out of those calories that you're going to assume, right? If you're going to pay the price on the extra time on the treadmill or whatever happens to be, make sure it was well worth it. So I think this is really crucial, is to be a mindful eater, particularly in moments like this. And so talking about that, let's just sort of stay on topic of dealing with these sort of issues about working out and food and such. As much as you can, try to stay active. Now, I realize for some that are listening to us here in urban areas, tight apartments, it's not easy. And there's even a discomfort for a lot of folks, particularly if they're vulnerable, to go outside, right, and walk the indoor hallway of the building or walk around in the parking lot or whatever happens to be. And so they've got anxiety about doing that. Find something to do in your home. There are hundreds things you can stream on YouTube from any kind of exercise you want to. If you're someone like me that remembers Jane Fonda back in the 80s, go find Jane Fonda and stream her videos on YouTube and laugh with it and have fun with it. That's music that you recognize. Our old friend Richard Simmons, I don't even know if Richard's still alive, I hope that he is, who used to have some really fun dynamics, not terribly taxing on the body, that can help you create some movement, but some movement. Now, if you're more dedicated and you're more significant with your workouts, tons of great stuff. Olympic caliber workouts are available. But what's important is to carve out the time. If you used to work out before work, get up now and work out before work. If you used to work out at lunch, do it now. If you used to work out in the evenings after work, do it again. Get back to those patterns that are critical in that regard, because it's crucial. Additionally, one caution I would give everybody, and I think by now most everybody realizes this, be careful not talking about the entertainment side of screen time, social media and things like that. Be careful with the news. The news primarily now is mostly not good. And if it's not of that caliber, it's political infighting. And frankly, no matter who you are and what you believe, you can't really watch the news without probably shaking your head in disgust and or just abject sadness for somebody that lost a brother or a sister or a mom or a dad or an uncle, and they weren't able to be there with them in their final time. They're not able to go to their funeral, right? Just be careful. We all need to stay aware. Don't spend so much time on it that you depress yourself and that your psyche can't handle it. I don't think we're built to have 20 hours of this kind of negative news on a daily basis. And I don't think there's anything wrong for you to compartmentalize that and have short bursts where you listen to it. You're acknowledging it. You're keeping up with what's important. Don't go down the rabbit hole. There's no way that that's healthy, and it's not going to help you come out of this in the way that you want to. You can come out of this having grown as a person, or at least kept up if that's what you choose to do. But there's no question you could spiral here if you don't develop some boundaries, prepare, and think about some of these dynamics, going way beyond just talking about making the most out of working from home. As we begin to wrap it up, a couple more things to mention. I believe in the symbolic nature, the symbolism of going to work. And that was really one of the very first things I learned when I started to work from home. I realized that I needed to get up, brush my teeth. I mean, that should seem obvious, right? But I'll guarantee you there's some watching that have found yourself creeping into the afternoon and you haven't really brushed your teeth because you don't have to, or maybe the person in the house with you hasn't done it either, right? And it's okay for moments in time, but if you're trying to develop patterns to grow, be productive, and come out of this thing on the other side better if possible, little habits like, for me, shaving. I'm conscious when I get on the Zoom with the office, and if I haven't shaven, I'm like, you know what, I need to be an example here, right? So I'm brushing my teeth, I'm shaving, I'm putting on a collared shirt. It'd be real easy to put on a t-shirt, right, and stay in your jammies all day, but I don't think that's how we best respond. If you're that person, that's great. But for the same reason, I don't go to the couch because it's soft and my couch is a place I relax and I don't want to try to work from my couch. I believe you get up and symbolically you cross the threshold, leaving your bedroom, and you're going into your work world. And it's just a simple pass through the kitchen to get the cup of coffee or whatever it happens to be. You'll have to build your own patterns of what that means for you. But I believe the symbolism of prepping for work in a way that makes sense will cause your day to have structure to it and completion. Because just like I believe that a day should have a beginning, so Marie and I, we still get up at 6 or 6:30, depending upon sort of the circumstances and what the next day holds and how late we worked the night before. We're not going to change that here. I try to be in the chair, looking at email, sipping on some hot water and lemon and cayenne about 7:45, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm not going to change that. That's my work pattern. And I'm going to try to make sure my day ends sort of in the same way that it did before. And then here, if you're just new to working from home, you want to make sure that you don't let work creep into every hour of the day. It's easy to constantly flip on the computer or look at text and emails. They can wait. If they don't say urgent, need a question right now, 911, try to have a pattern of responsiveness that's consistent with what you're used to so that you can get the rest, you can get the downtime, you can get all those things you need to be happy and healthy in this dynamic. And then as we sort of finish up here, a couple more things. Accountability. Right now, for a lot of people working from home, and I'm talking millions of people, accountability has been built into their system. When they go to work, there's sort of expectations of manners and behavior. There's start of the week meetings, follow-up meetings, check-in meetings, right? We have systems in place, even if they're not prescribed this way, that create accountability for what we do and the work we do. We know we got to have good manners and a good attitude and delivering things on time. Now that responsibility falls squarely on you, but I believe it's critical and a part of our own individual responsibilities of coming out of this thing together with an economy that's still working, that your company can still perform in the way it should. So in the same way, there's accountability for the social distancing that we're all practicing, and we're doing it for someone other than ourselves, right? This accountability here is about what you can do for your coworkers, for the people that run the business, whatever that happens to be in your particular circumstance. Make sure that you're recognizing that you don't just blow past deadlines. because of this if you can. Circumstances change, deadlines move. Obviously, I get that, but I want you to think about work as task and completion. Your own feeling of normalcy will go up if things have beginning and endings and delivery points where you can say completed, check it off your list. These little subtle things help out our psyches. It also is important not to just lean on excuses. We can all make excuses here, and no one's going to argue with anybody's excuse about anything in this moment in time. But that isn't how we maintain our own participation with our work on a personal or a professional level. One of the other things I do is just make sure, kind of getting back to the things like treating it like work, is I really work hard to keep that video on no matter what. If you get on a call with someone and they turn their video off, that's okay. They can do that in this moment. But the video's on, they're bright-eyed, they're willing to demonstrate their concentration and that they're treating it like work. I think that's a good sign. It's almost like if you show up early, you're showing up on time sort of dynamic. And so I think that's really crucial in that regard. And then a few final things to just mention. And this has really, for me, been a key to my entire career. I work hard, and particularly when working from home, I think this is crucial. I work hard before I close the computer and shut things down for the day to look at my to-do list and sort of assess what I accomplished and what I didn't accomplish. Is there something that I need to stretch to make sure I finish because there's a deadline associated with it, speaking to the issues of accountability? But more importantly, I want to make sure I've thought about the day I've just had, I've digested it, doesn't take very long, and I'm prepping now for the day before so that when I do shut things down, I've got peace of mind. I've done what I was supposed to. I can enjoy this moment in time with Boomer and Maria and the kids when that day comes again. But I'm also ready for tomorrow to serve the people I need to serve. I need to be ready. Don't put that off till the next morning. If you wait to prep for the day to the morning of, you're already behind. When you sit at your desk, I looked away because that's where my desk is. When you sit at that desk in the morning, you want it to be ready to go. You want to have that crisp to-do list sitting there from the night before about these are the things that are important for me to do this morning. Clearly, things are going to come up along the way and disrupt the pattern of work. We know that, but you want to be mentally prepared for the day. It will make you more excited to sit down because it's not ambiguous or you're not worried about it. And so this prep, always prepping at the end of the day for the next one, a 5-minute exercise, a 10-minute exercise, maybe it's 15 until you develop the full habits of it. I think this is as much a critical element in general of being successful, but frankly, of also just making working from home a success. And so that's one of my sort of final tips there. We are in an unprecedented moment, right? This pandemic is, it's frightening, right? It's an invisible killer. We're confident. We know there's another side of this, right? We're going to come out on the other side. The only worry is, just how dinged up are we, right? How dinged up are we personally? How dinged up are we professionally? What's the economy look like? What's the healthcare system look like? And then there's the personal side where, have we lost somebody close to us, a family member? We know we're losing people in the community, right? There's another side of this. We're probably never completely the same, but we can make it instructive. Make sure you stay mentally strong and keep yourself hopeful, even in those darkest moments. It's social distancing, but that doesn't mean being socially disconnected. Use Skype, use FaceTime, use whatever you've got to do to get on a call with somebody. I believe getting on that call and having it be a video call makes it more intimate. And so I believe that's critical. I think it's more personal when you do that. But stay connected, socially distance, but doesn't mean your communications can't be connected. And if you need to, this is a nice thing I saw somebody was doing. They were going through their high school annual, going through old photographs from college, and they were making a point to reach out to one person each week that they hadn't spoke to in years, just to check in and say, hey, how you doing? How's things going for you? And having a sincere conversation to kind of revisit that relationship that probably rusted over time. You can almost rejoin it just like you were back on the campus, and bring us feeling of warmth, or just be a good listener for someone that you didn't know, but your phone call was timely because they're having just a really tough time, right? Now more than ever, we need each other. I think we need our work. And hopefully you found that these tips will make a difference for you. If you've got others, I'd love to hear them. Reach out to me. Thank you all, and know that we're here for you. We're doing everything we can to serve you. We're want to be a part of the solution with you. So bye for now, and look forward to speaking to you next time.